Hey everybody, my name is Jason and this is Netminder Review. So today I want to talk about whether or not it's possible for Mackenzie Blackwood, goaltender with the New Jersey Devils, to win the Calder Trophy. If any of you are not aware, the Calder Trophy is the trophy awarded at the end of every NHL season to the player that is voted on to be the Rookie of the Year. So Mackenzie Blackwood is a rookie goaltender for the New Jersey Devils this year and is having an exceptional season. The Devils themselves not doing so well. Mackenzie Blackwood is definitely a highlight for New Jersey. So I was listening to a conversation on the radio the other day about the Calder Trophy and who was likely to win it this year. And the name Mackenzie Blackwood was only thrown in really in passing. And so that led me to ask the question, really, does he have any hope? Is he worth being in the conversation? So I wanted to dig into not only his statistics, but the statistics of those who are generally considered to be the favorites this year, and look at past winners and try to analyze whether or not I believe Mackenzie Blackwood has a realistic shot of winning or even being in the top three. So the last goaltender to win the Calder Trophy was Steve Mason of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that was in 2009. That year, Mason started 61 games, or he played in 61 games. I didn't differentiate between started or played in. He was 33, 20, and 7 with a .916 save percentage and a .251 goals against average. That year, Steve Mason had 10 shutouts, which is an exceptional number. So 10 shutouts in 61 games, I don't have anything to compare that to. It's just fantastic. So I think when you look at a statistic like that, you look at those overall numbers, very solid save percentage at .916, very solid goals against at .251, played 61 games. The 10 shutouts just really stood out to me. So it's not difficult to understand why he was in the consideration and eventually a winner. Before that, the last goaltender to win it was 5 years earlier in 2004. Andrew Raycroft won it with the Boston Bruins. He was 29, 18, and 9, played 57 games, had a .926 save percentage, which is excellent, and a 2.05 goals against. So we see here some statistics just really jumping off the page. Exceptional save percentage and exceptional goals against average. Prior to that, the goaltender prior to that to win it was in 2001, Evgeny Nabokov. He played with San Jose, played 66 games. He was 32, 21, and 7 with a .915 save percentage, a .219 goals against average, 2.19, and 6 shutouts. So a high shutout number, really good goals against average. And so far we see 61 games played, 57 games played, 66 games played. Martin Brodeur, 1994, won the Calder Trophy for New Jersey. 47 games played, 27, 11, and 8 with a .915 save percentage and a 2.40 goals against with 3 shutouts. So a moderate number of shutouts, a very good goals against at 2.4 and a solid .915 save percentage in 47 games. Really good record, 27, 11, and 8. And prior to that, Ed Belfour, 1991 with Chicago, 74 games played, which is a stunning number. 43, 19, and 7, amazing record. A .910 save percentage, so, good, but not as good as all the others that have won it that I've mentioned so far. And a .247 goals against, so a very solid goals against with 4 shutouts. Now, there's something very important that I didn't mention about each one of these goaltenders. Their statistics were strong. They played plenty of games. And some of them had a lot of shutouts, a really wow number of shutouts, some not so much. But all 5 of these goaltenders, their teams made the playoffs. One of my biggest concerns with Mackenzie Blackwood this year is that New Jersey is not going to make the playoffs. Now, that's not Mackenzie Blackwood's fault, but it doesn't change the fact that the Calder Trophy does not have to go to a playoff winner. That's for sure. I mean, last year, Pettersson won it. with Vancouver, and Vancouver did not make the playoffs. But I wonder if, for a goaltender, if it matters a little bit more that his team make the playoffs. So since 1990, 5 goaltenders, the ones I just named, Belfour, Brodeur, Nabokov, Raycroft, and Mason, have won the Calder Trophy. All of them had anywhere from extremely solid to exceptional statistics, but all of them went to the playoffs. Mackenzie Blackwood is not going to the playoffs. Will that hurt him? I'm inclined to say yes. Should it hurt him? That's another story. I mean, if the guy has a phenomenal season, then he deserves the Calder regardless of whether his team around him has a phenomenal season or not. But I can understand someone looking at it and saying, well, a goaltender that takes his team to the playoffs showed that he was beyond exceptional, right? He had the great statistics and he also had the wins and the playoff appearance to go with it. I can understand how a voter could count that against Mackenzie Blackwood. I'm not sure that I agree that a voter should. Now, New Jersey, the New Jersey Devils, Mackenzie Blackwood's team, has 19 games left to play. Blackwood has played 43 games. So if we go back and we look at these other goaltenders that won, 61 games played, 57, 66, 47, and amazingly 74 with Ed Belfour. Blackwood's played 43 games. If he just plays 15 of New Jersey's remaining games, and I'm sorry, I skipped something. I knew I was missing something. New Jersey has 19 games left to play. Blackwood has played 43 games this year. So if Blackwood were to play, let's say, 15 of New Jersey's remaining 19 games, which I think is realistic. I know that, they got rid of Demang. They have Corey Schneider. Schneider's played the last 2 games. He got a win against Detroit, lost last night. Schneider's not really been very strong this season, and I'm trying to be nice there. So Mackenzie Blackwood is probably going to get the bulk of the starts. So let's say he gets 15 more starts. That's 58 games played. Well, when you compare that to Mason's 61 or Raycroft's 57 or 66 for Nabokov or 47 for Brodeur, he certainly will have met the number of games played requirement. Last year, Jordan Binnington was 3rd in Calder Trophy voting and did not play as many games. So Mackenzie Blackwood is going to have the games played requirement met. Not that there's an official requirement that he's got to play a certain amount of games. But I'm sure if he had only played, let's say, 30 games, there would definitely be some voters that would hold that against him. Now, his record right now is 21, 12, and 7. So let's just say he plays 15 more games and goes 8, 6, and 1. Okay, in that time, if he were to do that, that would finish the season for him with a record of 29, 18, and 8. Well, if you look at Raycroft's record, Raycroft finished the season that he won the Calder 29, 18, and 9. Nabokov was 32, 21, and 7. So Mackenzie Blackwood's numbers would be comparable to Raycroft or Nabokov's numbers. Okay, so definitely from a games played standpoint, I think we can check the box for Mackenzie Blackwood and say he's got it. From a record standpoint, I understand the season's not over and I'm projecting, but if my projections are relatively accurate, then I think we could check the box on that as well. From a games played standpoint, good. From an overall record standpoint, good. What about his statistics? Well, right now he's got a .916 save percentage. Let's just say he maintains that .916. .916 is what Steve Mason had the year that he won the Calder Trophy. And Evgeny Nabokov won it with a .915 save percentage. Ed Belfour won it with a .910. I know he played 74 games, but still, I think that we could check the box for Mackenzie Blackwood on the matter of save percentage, provided that he's able to maintain a save percentage right around .916. What about goals against average? Well, his goals against average is 2.73. So if he were to win the Calder, he would definitely, let's say he maintains the 2.73 goals against average for the rest of the season or hangs out right around there, he would have the worst goals against average of all of those other goaltenders that I mentioned. So he would be the Calder Trophy winning goaltender with the worst goals against average since the year 1990. Does that hurt him? Is that a mark against him? Possibly, but he's not on as good of a team as those other 5 goaltenders were. So, take that into account. Maybe it counts against him, maybe it doesn't. If nothing else, it probably doesn't work in his favor. He has 3 shutouts so far this year, so that's okay. I mean, some of the goaltenders that won the Calder in the past only had 3 shutouts. Now, what about his competition? Who else is up for the Calder? Or who were the other 5 goaltenders who've won it since 1990 up against? Well, when Steve Mason won it, the other 2 finalists were Bobby Ryan and Chris Versteeg. Now, both of them forwards. Ryan a right wing, Versteeg a left wing. Ryan had 31 goals, 26 assists for 57 points. Versteeg 22 goals, 31 assists for 53 points. Is there likely to be a Calder finalist this year with those kind of numbers? Well, maybe. I'll get into that in a moment. But the Calder finalists this year, I think, are going to have a little bit of a different dynamic to them. When Andrew Raycroft won it, Michael Ryder and Trent Hunter were number 2 and 3 in the voting, respectively. Both right wingers, both with 25 goals. Ryder with 38 assists and Hunter with 26 assists. So 63 points for Ryder, 51 for Hunter. When Evgeny Nabokov won it, Brad Richards, a center, 21 goals, 41 assists, 63 points. And Martin Havlat, a right winger, 19 goals, 23 assists for 42 points. So here we have other finalists over those years: 57 points, 53 points, 63 points, 51 points, 62 points, 42 points. What about when Martin Brodeur won it? Jason Arnott was the second runner, or the first runner-up, second place. He's a center. Mikhail Renberg, right winger. Arnott, 33 goals, 35 assists, 68 points. 38 goals for Renberg, 44 assists, and 82 points. 82 points. It's crazy to think that somebody got 82 points in the rookie season and didn't win the Calder. In fact, was third in the voting. Of course, he lost to Martin Brodeur, so I'm sure in retrospect he can look back and say, well, at least I lost to one of the greatest goaltenders in the history of the game. When Ed Belfour won it, Sergei Fedorov finished second in the voting. Center for the Red Wings, 31 goals, 48 assists, 79 points. Another one. Amazing. Ken Hodge Jr. of Boston, a center, 30 goals, 29 assists for 59 points, was the third place in votes. So we have some pretty significant point totals here for some of these guys who were runners up to a goaltender who did not win. So a goaltender had to play pretty darn well to be able to pass up those other players. Are there players like that this year? People with ridiculous point totals, or people who are going to finish in the 60s or 70s in point totals that Mackenzie Blackwood would have to jump over? Well, this year, it's a little bit more difficult. I think that trying to figure out the Calder this year is a little more complicated than looking at previous years and looking at point totals. Why? Because both of the seeming frontrunners for the Calder this year are defensemen. We have Quinn Hughes with Vancouver and Cale Makar with Colorado. So in these other years where goaltenders won the Calder Trophy since 1990, and these 5 different goaltending winners of the Calder Trophy, the other 2 finalists every single year was a forward. A forward in pretty well every case. We could make a case that Havlat's 42 points wasn't as amazing. Still a heck of a point total for a rookie. But in all the other cases, with all of these first runners up and second runners up, they had really high point totals, but they were forwards. How do you compare that to defensemen? How can you take Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar and compare them to Sergei Fedorov or Jason Arnott or Trent Hunter? It's hard to make that comparison because you're looking at completely different statistics. So since 1990, the same period that I looked at for goaltending, where I found that only 5 goalies have won the Calder in that time, only 4 defensemen have won the Calder in that time. We have Aaron Ekblad in 2015, Tyler Myers in 2010, Barrett Jackman in 2003, and Brian Berard in 1997. Now, in the case of Myers and Berard, they each finished their rookie season with 48 points. So really solid point totals, and they were defensemen. Now, I understand defensemen can have high point totals, lots of assists, right? A fair bit of goals, but lots of assists. But still, when you compare that to Sergei Fedorov's 79 points or Michael Ryder's 63 points, obviously it's going to be less. Nonetheless, here were two defensemen that won the Calder and had really high point totals. But Aaron Ekblad's point total, 39, a little bit less. And let's take a look at the 2003 Calder Cup winner, or Calder Trophy winner, Rookie of the Year for the St. Louis Blues, Barrett Jackman, who only had 19 points. He was a plus 23. So clearly when Jackman won the Calder, he won it because of his defensive play. And being a Blues fan myself and living close to St. Louis, I watched Barrett Jackman for his whole career. Barrett Jackman was a solid defensive defenseman. He was never known for his scoring. He wasn't going to put up massive point totals. Barrett Jackman won because he was an excellent defenseman, an excellent defensive defenseman, not an offensive defenseman. So it becomes very difficult to compare goaltenders to forwards to defensemen, but then you have to consider offensive defensemen with high point totals who also obviously have to play a strong game in the defensive zone and the neutral zone to be considered. Comparing those guys to a guy like Barrett Jackman, who's primarily making his money and showing his worth on the defensive side of things. So there's really a lot of comparisons that have to go on here that are really difficult to make. So when we look at Quinn Hughes from Vancouver, one of the odds-on favorites to win this year, he already has 62 points in 58 points in 62 games. I got that backward. 58 points in 62 games, and Vancouver still got, I don't remember how many games they've played exactly. They've probably still got 18, 19, 20 games to play. He's got plenty of time to rack up more points. He's already broken the record for Vancouver. So here's a guy who not only is he a skilled defenseman, but he's putting up ridiculous point totals. I mean, out of the last four defensemen to win the Calder Trophy, the highest point total any of them had was 48, and he's already at 58 and could very easily push into 60 or 70 points before the season is over. What about Cale Makar? Cale Makar has only played 54 games. That's 8 games fewer than Quinn Hughes, but he has 45 points. Only 3 less than Tyler Myers and Brian Berard when they won it. So it's very realistic that Cale Makar will have a higher point total than any of the 4 defensemen who have won the Calder Trophy since 1990. So how do you compare these guys to forwards or to goaltenders? Well, it's really difficult to do. And I think a big part of it comes down to not only how many points did they score and how well do they play defensively for those two guys that are defensemen, but how valuable are they to their team, and can that be measured through going to the playoffs? Now, again, you don't have to go to the playoffs to win a Calder. We saw that last year. But I really think you're going to see a situation where they're going to look at Cale Makar, they're going to look at Quinn Hughes, and they're going to say, here are 2 extremely skilled defensemen who have put up ridiculous point totals for rookie defensemen and have helped their teams to be successful to the point of, with Colorado, no doubt making the playoffs. With Vancouver, I mean, there's still some question mark there, especially with Jacob Markstrom injured. But I think that they're going to make the playoffs. I still think that they're going to finish 3rd in the division. And I think whenever it all settles and the votes come in, those things are going to be factored heavily and the fact that the Devils are going to miss the playoffs is going to count against Mackenzie Blackwood. And there's one other person to factor in here too, and that's Victor Olufsen from Buffalo, a left winger with 48 games played, 19 goals and 21 assists. He's at 40 points. So, you know, let's say Buffalo has, and again, I should have looked at the numbers, but Buffalo, let's say they have 20 games left. They might have a little bit less than that. So let's just say he gets another 10 points before the season's out. He finishes with 50 points. I mean, there are only 2 forwards who were finalists in the years that the goalies won that had around 50 points. The others had quite a bit more. So maybe Olufsen isn't a finalist. Maybe Mackenzie Blackwood is a finalist. That would be possible, and I hope that's what happens. I really do, because I love seeing goaltenders in consideration for trophies like the Hart Trophy or the Calder Trophy. So it's wonderful that there's a Vezina Trophy to give to the goaltender who's voted every year as the best goaltender, but I like to see goaltenders in consideration for these other trophies that are not position specific. So what do I think is going to happen this year? I think Cale Makar is going to win. I think Quinn Hughes is going to finish second. And I really, really, really hope Mackenzie Blackwood finishes third. Not that I don't want him to win. I'd love it if he won. But since I don't think that's a realistic possibility, I hope he's at least one of the 3. Nothing against Victor Olufsen. Victor Olufsen is fantastic. I have nothing but positive to think and say about him. But I want to see a goalie in the final 3 like we did last year. If Binnington could do it last year, and remember, the votes for this are before, they're at the end of the season, but before the playoffs. So it wasn't based on the fact that Binnington won a Stanley Cup. That's not why he finished 3rd in the voting. If Binnington could finish 3rd in the voting last year, and I know it was an amazing story, right? He comes in relatively unknown, takes a team from last all the way into the playoffs. And that was part of Binnington making it into the top 3 was the story. But what about the story of Mackenzie Blackwood, a New Jersey Devils team that can't seem to win a game pretty much for the most part if he's not in their goal? But when he is in their goal, they're not only winning games, but they're winning games where they allow ridiculous amounts of shots, and Mackenzie Blackwood is stealing the show. I mean, in their wins recently, Mackenzie Blackwood is the New Jersey Devils to a large degree. And I don't mean to hate on the rest of the team. They have some talent, and I think that they can be good and much better than they are. But nonetheless, right now, they're winning games because Mackenzie Blackwood is winning games. And if he's not one of the 3 finalists for the Calder, well, I'm going to consider that to be a disappointment. Let me know what you think. Do you think Mackenzie Blackwood deserves to be in the consideration? And if so, where? 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th behind Olufsen? And let me know what you think in general about this video. If you have any suggestions on how I can improve, I would welcome them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll hit the like button. I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe. That would be awesome if you will. And thank you so much for watching, and have an excellent day.